Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada.
What was the pic that you just sent me, Derek?
The one where, yeah.
Look.
Yeah. That's out at the track. That's how crazy things get. That's what happens after 5 weeks of running out on the track at 95 degrees with like jungle humidity.
Don't you love it?
Oh yeah, man, for sure. Like it just makes you a little bit crazier.
I know. It's nothing beats it. How you been, man?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, things are going okay. So
what's going on at Hype?
Not much, same thing as every other gym in the city. A whole lot of nothing, but I'm able to get in there and work out. Haven't really lifted in a while though. With I mean, there's no way I could lift on top of what I'm trying to do with Derek's speed program. Like, forget it.
It's
no
a lot
shot.
more. Yeah, I went through it. It was Derek. Is it the same one that you gave me?
It's a little different. I restructured it a bit, but yeah,
Okay.
it's I mean, a lot of short sprints, a lot of acceleration. So same difference.
It was a lot of fun.
I mean, basically, if you're not accustomed to doing it, it tends to be very stressful. So yeah,
Right.
but Pat's durable.
Pat can handle it. Pat's got wheels too.
Oh yeah.
Good to see. It's good to see a guy that size move like that. Makes me happy.
In a bikini.
If I had $1 for every time I heard a woman say that, I'd be poor as fuck.
I love it. Derek kind of got me back into the running this year. Also, it was fun. Now, Derek, did I tell you I'm doing all that Omega Wave that running program that Val put together?
No, I haven't heard about that.
I got to go through a detail with you on that because that's been awesome. Running a little bit more than I intended, but hey, it is what it is.
It's like, what else are we gonna do?
Can't fucking do anything. I mean, Pat, it's so crazy about what's going on in the world with the gyms right now because we really don't have. I mean, Drive hasn't been open as long as Hype hasn't been open. Fortunately, I'm not paying rent because my ironically, I was telling Derek, my lease expired May 31st.
Wow.
So my 15-year lease expired May 31st. And my landlord back in December told me to fuck myself when I put an offer on the table. I said, fine. I started looking at space. And then he contacts me in April with a little bit of a different tone. And let's just put it that way. I'm going to say it very nicely. And then we negotiated something really good, but I'm not signing it because I don't know if are we going to be back in there in 6 months? I mean, do you really know? None of us know.
No clue. Yeah.
Did you hear what Cuomo said? Cuomo said
I heard. No, go ahead.
He said,
last thing I
come
heard
talk
was
to me.
Labor Day.
Last I heard, he said, once we have a vaccine, come talk to me 6 months after that.
Really?
Yep.
About gyms?
Yeah.
What about the subway?
I don't know, man. I don't believe it. I think right now he's just doing what he has to do to keep everything safe. But I don't know, man. There's no way that if I will make you $1 bet, I will make you any amount of money bet. If we're open before the New Year's, I'll be shocked. Shocked. You just got to go under the table. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all just doing all the stuff that nobody's mentioning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
we won't cut that out there.
Edits.
But I'm still interested in talking about your project, Pat, with all the Kaiser equipment and the measurements and all that. And, you know, obviously that's something that's going to become more prevalent once you do return. How's that been going just in general?
So it's going really well. We finished putting the project together with the Kaiser equipment. And basically, like we really finished it literally like 2 weeks before COVID hit, so it was like, we got this thing, the beta version done. It's accurate. It measures exactly what we were hoping it would measure, which is it knows the load and it knows the range of motion for every exercise. So it displays your mechanical work after you perform a rep, and it adds it up. Like, we got one box that shows you your work per set, and another box on the left column that shows you your total work of all sets combined. So we're able to track what you're actually doing, which is, you know, it's just crazy to me. Like, people have been saying that they track their workouts for a long time, and they've been tracking 50% of a resistance training session, because it's basically force times distance, you know, and they've only been they haven't tracked the distance that the thing travels. And the amazing thing is that we see exactly how much of a difference it makes in mechanical work, depending upon the distance that you actually move the implement. And so, you know, taller guys, they're doing so much more work. To me, it just like, it actually shows, you know, generally speaking, we've always, you know, in the culture of the weight room and sports, it's almost like you can separate it and be like, these are the guys that are great in the weight room, and these are the guys that are great at sport. And they're not always the same people, you know what I mean? And I think that you can see the difference now. I think the guys that were great at sport were still great at the weight room. They were just probably moving the thing further. You know, the anthropometrics were hiding what was actually happening. You know, I can tell you, like, if I'm on the leg press and somebody else that's got longer legs than me is on the leg press, we were doing sets of 20, and I had 700 pounds on there, and the other guy had 540 on there, and he had a higher work score than I did.
Right.
This guy's a better athlete than me. He, you know, he looks better than I do aesthetically. You know, he looks like, hey, this guy looks like a better athlete. But you might think that I'm better in the weight room than this guy. And it's like, actually, not really. You know,
Right.
it's just that it would have gotten hidden. Like, it looks like I'm doing so much more than this dude with 700 for 20, 500, 540 for 20. His 540 for 20 is more mechanical work.
Yeah.
So it really, like, you know, to me, it's almost like you can see what's happened in CrossFit, where you're awarding the guy that's good at lifting weights that's shorter than everybody else. Because over the course of doing thousands of reps in something like the CrossFit Games, it's going to come down to who has the least amount of mechanical work they have to perform per rep. That's probably going to come out as a winner. It's been really remarkable. We've got some, so we know that it works. You know, our next step is actually going to be pretty crazy, to tell you the truth, because we've got some technology that should be able to do this with all free weights and using the exact same scoreboard. And all you'd really need is your camera on your phone to be able to do it. So that'll really open it up for all kinds of training, where people will be able to get an accurate score for what they're actually doing. Because, you know, it's almost like, for me, like I do things because I get driven crazy by witnessing certain things over the years. And, like, nothing drives me crazier than watching people go through a workout and half-ass their workout, and, like, you know, doing partial reps, and, like, you know, it's like you're not really doing the thing. It's like people blast through these core exercises, and they're like, oh, that's easy, what's next? And it's like, you didn't do it. You didn't do anything. And now, at the very least, when it comes to lifting weights, it's like, I've got this piece of technology that gives you a number that actually tells you exactly what you did. And now you know why you're not suffering after you did the same thing that somebody else did that's on the ground, like, you know, hey, why is this so hard for you? I don't get it. This is so easy. You didn't do anything. That's why it was so easy. And it's like, now it's right in your face. It's like the anti-Planet Fitness. It's like, this is the judgment zone and the truth about what you're actually doing. And it's given to you in just straight up, here's your number, here's your score. But it makes tracking things a lot better. It also is like one of these things where, if you coach people long enough, you realize, like, you just say the same damn things to people over and over all day, every day. Like, hey, you got to go through the full range of motion. But what I realized after watching this is there's no actual incentive for most people to go through the full range of motion. They actually get punished from the perspective of like, they would have to use less weight, which to them is a punishment. They would get less repetitions, which to them is a punishment. They want to be successful with the task that you gave them. Hey, we're doing 3 sets of 10 with this exercise. And they think, like, hey, if I just am doing this with more weight, that's a good thing. And they'll cheat reps. They'll do whatever they have to do to get the job done with numerically whatever comes out as the highest thing. And now they would actually be positively reinforced, given a reward for doing the reps properly, full range of motion, all of the things that you're looking to get out of clients. So immediately what we saw is that you get clients on these things and their score is lower because they didn't go through the full range. And then they immediately see with the same weight or even less weight, their score went up because they did it the right way. And then they immediately make that behavioral switch to doing full range of motion reps. And it's like, man, I've been coaching the same dude for 5 years. And within one session, he switched over to doing things that the way I was trying to get him to do it. And then they're metabolically smoked. They're like, oh my God, I must be out of shape today. And it's like, no, you're not.
No, you're actually
what
just
you
doing
did,
work.
you just increased your work output by 15%.
Right.
With the same weights that we were using before. You just actually moved them through space farther. So it's been really just a very interesting kind of thing to witness.
It's a great way to, it sounds like just such an amazing way to be able to quantify success for someone coming in. Because listen, someone like you, it's a different story, because when you get under a load, whether it's 600 pounds or whether it's 300 pounds, you're moving the weight the same way. I mean, it feels differently on your body, but you're hitting that same depth. You just reminded me of a story where I think the most impressive thing I've ever seen in the gym in my life, and I've seen guys squat 800 pounds live. I saw a guy who was about 6'9", doing sets of 5 with 405 on his back, ass to grass, spine was in a perfect position, great hip mobility, 6'9". And I just remember looking at him going, holy fuck, I have never seen that in my life. I've never seen someone that creates so much tension in their body at that height, to the point where the spine, and you know what I'm talking about, that squat where you're just like, whoa, like spine is stable, rigid, in and out of the hold, head position's perfect, everything looked great. And to this day, I still kind of always go back to it, because, you know, it cracks me up when, even when we're in the digital era now, and I admire you for getting a bit fluffy sometimes. I love all your educational stuff, but you understand how you've got to kind of cater and you got to do things to kind of turn heads a bit. But I got this a few times, like, oh, that's easy. You have anything else for me? And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a fucking deadlift. Like, it's a front squat. How is that easy? Like, you can go in, Pat, and do a whole workout of front squatting and be fucking done. Like, what do you mean? How is someone just saying that's easy to me? Makes no sense. I can't even, and that's what I dislike. That's the main thing that I dislike about digital training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and look, like, I feel like we're all, like, with the human brain, the way it's set up, we detect errors really well. Like, anybody can watch two people squatting and you immediately know, like, hey, that's a really good one, that's a really bad one. And, you know, being able to go under the hood and explain why one is really good and why one is really bad is difficult. And even, okay, now you know why it's good, why it's bad. Like, how do you go about making the bad one better? And a lot of times it's like the person that's got the bad movement expression, they're the lower in terms of the coachable individual too. Like, their motor learning prowess is really low. So now you're trying to improve expression of movement from someone that's going to have a low capability in that area. Like, they don't feel their body well. They don't sense their body moving well. It's not, but I'll tell you something, if you give them something that is some piece of biofeedback that is numerically based, they go outside of their body. They almost use their visual system to change a number to be able to allow their body to do something differently. And now all of a sudden they feel the aftermath of it. It's almost like if you're talking feed forward or feedback mechanisms on the brain, it's like they don't have the feed forward capabilities of like, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. I'll make this adjustment with my body. They almost need to see a piece of visual evidence, whether it be video footage or a score or something that causes them to make a physical change that might even not be conscious to them. But once they do it, now they get this feedback sensation of like, holy shit, that was really difficult. Like, I'm smoked. Like, why was that so difficult? But their brain, it sensed an error. You know what I mean? Like, again, like when you're watching something and you see something bad, you sense the error very quickly. Like, you pick it up immediately. When you, because like our brains are just prediction engines, you know, they expect certain outcomes. And when the outcome is not seen, now the brain is searching for an explanation of what went wrong or what the hell just happened. Like, I need an explanation for this. So the same person that is used to going through a session and like, oh, it was so easy, it was so easy, it was so easy. Now they're like, oh my God, what the hell just happened right there? It's like, well, the explanation is right here. Like, here's a number to be able to display to you. It's similar. I'm sure you've had this where you get people that have been like training at Barry's boot camp for however long, and then they're like going to try something new, and or like any kind of boot camp type of class. And what I love doing with those kinds of people is using, because they want like an aerobic sort of, high intensity interval type of session. If you do anything other than that, you're going to alienate them.
Yeah, of
but
course.
I always do the same thing. I use every quantifiable piece of equipment in the gym. I'm like, all right, we're going to do the Airdyne bike, and after that, we're going to run on the self-propelled treadmill, and after that, we're going to use the rower. And I give them specific distances that they have to hit. And like, you're not done until you hit this distance. And we're going to go through this for 3 rounds. And then they're like, oh my God, that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I'm like, yeah, because I didn't just tell you to go for like an arbitrary amount of time. Like, I gave you an amount of mechanical work to accomplish. And you did that. And this is the aftermath of what happens when you do that much mechanical work. It's just a linear relationship. As work increases, the impact put upon the body is going to be changed. The magnitude of that hitting you is going to be, you're going to feel it. Now you know what the hell you did.
I had one question, Derek, and then jump. Do you ever find, because a lot of these boot camp people, I mean, this is about the entertainment effect. I mean, I always get a kick out of it when they come in. They're like, I do these high intensity classes, and I'm like, how can that be high intensity when you're going a 5-to-1 work to rest ratio? Like, you have no output. Like, I'm watching you jump. You can't jump on a 12-inch box. Like, you're slow, you're weak. These are the things I'm thinking to myself. I'd be out of business if I said this to people. But do you find that when you put someone into that environment, that sometimes when they realize that they really haven't been working, or you're really putting their ass up against the wall, and you're making them do something that they were scared to do? I'm sure you get a good response sometimes, but do you ever have anyone be like, fuck this this is too much, man?
Yeah. Oh yeah. For a while, we like Ethan and I were both putting people through the 30-30 workout that I had as part of Original Mass. Like, because it's difficult. Like, when you're trying to figure out the personal training game in Manhattan, it's like, people are very fickle. Like, you don't know what the hell they really want. Like, you do one thing that they didn't like or something like that, you never see them again, and now you don't get, it could be tens of thousands of dollars if you acquire one new client that's a high-paying individual that comes 3 or 4 times a week. Like, you just lost out on a huge bonus. And so you want to make sure that everyone that comes in and works with you sticks. And we seem to be getting really good retention on the 30-30 day one approach. Like, we're not going to coach you much. We're going to pick these very basic exercises. We're going to put you 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 15 reps at every station. And it's just this metabolic, hell bath. And then, so it was working in the beginning. Like, it seemed like every single person was just like, new client that would stick. And then all of a sudden it was like, it wasn't working. And then it was kind of like this 50-50 sort of a thing. We were just getting a better sample of humans going through it. And it was kind of like, well, the people that wanted to come in and work hard, they would stick every single time. And then other people, like, it was just like way overwhelming for them. Like, you just sent them to the darkest place they've ever been in their life. And they're like, I don't ever want to experience that again. And so we kind of came up with trying to read who came in the door, and then go with option A of 30-30 for people that seemed to be individuals that were like, gung-ho, hardcore, like, yeah, let's do this. And then option B was this other kind of like cardio circuit thing that we came up with that was still challenging, but was a little bit like on the softer side. And that seemed to work for those people pretty well.
As part of the analysis of work, and you're doing obviously range of motion plus load, do you track velocity as well as part of that?
Yeah, we have that. We have you'll see a number given to you as a score. That's work. Then under that, there's a bar graph that's displaying the power of each rep so that you can visually see when it starts to drop off. So if you want to train for certain things, like if you wanted to avoid slower reps that would be associated with fatigue, you know when to cut it. Or if you know, for aesthetics and personal training, more style, when you, those people, generally speaking, are looking to build muscle mass, you can tell them, like, listen, you didn't actually try hard on that set. Like, where you ended was not where you should have ended, because all of your reps were flat from a power perspective. Your last rep was just as fast as your fifth rep. Okay, so you can see effort, and like literally, like, you're not done. Like, you guys ever see The Great Outdoors with John Candy?
Of course, come on, John Candy.
Okay, so
amazing.
like, you know, the old 96er steak, where
look at the maggots on that meat.
he's eating he's eating the whole thing, and then that chef comes out and he's like, he's not done. There's that gristle and fat is left.
Yeah, the gristle and fat. No, he's not done.
So I feel like that chef when I see people with this flat line, where I'm like, oh no, he's not done. Like, you've got a few more reps left in you. The other thing you see is when people cheat on form. So it's especially present on like chest supported row, for instance, where they're doing pretty good reps, and then all of a sudden they get tired, and now they turn their chest supported row into like almost like a back extension. It's like, hey, look, you see your graph started to drop and then it went back up again. It shouldn't be able to do that. Like,
it's almost self-coaching. It's almost self-coaching in a way. I mean, is the idea? I mean, you guys are gonna be running a lot of group with this, because I remember you and Ethan talking to me about something very similar to this years ago, and I'm really proud of you guys that you were able to put this into place. But it's interesting how you evolve, and in business you see certain things stick in the beginning, and then you're like, a couple months later you're like, oh man, this ain't working. What is the ultimate goal right now? Like, what's the end goal here for you guys?
The end goal is, you know, like I said, I think we're going to probably have technology that can measure anything. It's going to be camera based. It's going to know the geometry of the human body, and understand the distances based upon, you know, how big you are, relationships between joints, and it will be able to measure the work output of anything that you can physically do. So we want to be able to provide a service to anyone that exercises that owns a cell phone, and be able to tell them exactly what they just did, and to be able to provide them ultimately with an intelligent program design that can progress them in whatever form of exercise they're doing, that they're able to film. So if it's lifting weights, that's pretty easy, okay? If it's doing an at-home aerobic circuit with an online instructor, we'd be able to measure that too. You know, it basically just tell it to input what amount of weight are you using for an exercise, and then it will know the mechanical work that you performed. And if you're able to continue to move that upward, then you're probably making intelligent progress. But the thing is then the step two is, like, people don't know how to progress things from a mathematical perspective, and we would be able to provide that information through some kind of an algorithm that we could create. So it's going to start with a showcase of what we believe is the gold standard, the Rolls Royce of resistance training exercise, which is with Kaiser equipment. And we want to have a New York City storefront that is able to have a gorgeous, you know, kind of group or small group, you know, establishment that people can come into and receive pretty damn good coaching, and experience kind of this boutique sort of beautiful group class situation that other group classes have done a great job with. You know, like, people always want to throw things under the bus. Let's throw Soul Cycle under the bus. Let's throw, you know, every boot camp. They do a great job with making really cool facilities with great lighting and the right color turf and ground and walls. So we're going to have the right people sort of create the aesthetic. We're going to have the right equipment in there. We're going to have it being able to be scored. We'll have a user interface so that people can check in with their phone. The phone will be able to communicate with every piece of equipment. It'll be able to be displayed on a scoreboard, but in the aftermath, it'll be able to tell you all the personal information about yourself, the work, the power on each exercise. We'll be able to give people advice on how to move forward from an exercise perspective, progress them, program design for them intelligently. But that's kind of like what we want to display that. That's like our, the Fifth Ave sort of like showcase. Here's the Gucci Fifth Ave store. Here's the top end Lexus, but in reality, the money would roll in by selling a bunch of Camrys and Corollas, which would probably be your own camera doing your own sort of workout at the gym or at home or whatever it is, and being able to have, ultimately a community that you could interact with where maybe you're doing similar workouts to other people, you're on the same program and you're able to compare your scores, or you're in a group class on Zoom and you're able to have your instructor see your scores and be able to tell you, hey, you got to pick it up. You got to do a little bit more on whatever burpee it is thing that you're doing. But complete and total domination of the fitness scene. And that's the end goal. Every single person that has a phone to implement this into that.
It's interesting bringing in that community component and how sticky it really is, and how, I roll my eyes sometimes because when you get around really smart coaches and they're, you know what I'm talking about, Pat and Derek, it's like, oh, I've got the highest education, and they're kind of jerking themselves off a bit on that. But they don't really understand how there's so much to learn from businesses like Soul or businesses like Barry. I'm not talking about their program. I'm not talking about the treadmills they have them running on or the instructors or how they look, et cetera, et cetera. I'm talking about they're doing something that a lot of the smartest instructors in the world can't do, and that's make money. It's like, come on, guys, like, stop going and taking your 300th course and go take a marketing course. Or actually, you know what? Why don't you join one of those facilities and walk in and try and spend a month there and figure out what is it that might have actually got you turned on about that a little bit. And you're a power lifter, but what was, I remember Charlie Weingroff telling me years ago that he actually went to a Soul Cycle class. He's like, actually, I kind of enjoyed it. And I looked at Charlie like he had 9 heads because I couldn't believe he would say that. And I respected him for his honesty. But have I been to Soul Cycle classes? Sure. Like, do you get in for it from? It's not my thing, but there was a moment on that bike with the music, and there's some, hot woman in the corner, and everyone's kind of pumping, the music's going, you got a good sweat going, and you're getting into it. And there's something that I think is really overlooked in the industry when it comes to products like that.
I tell all the trainers that come to Hype all the time, I'm like, listen, you're going to look out on this floor and you're going to see some stuff that you think sucks. Okay. You're going to see some trainers that are doing things that you think are stupid, terrible program design. But what I want you to pay attention to is the fact that guy's going to have 10 clients today. And what I need you to understand is he's doing something right. And you got to figure out what that is. And if you fail to figure that out, then you're doing yourself a huge disservice. There's a lot to learn from a lot of people here. And I couldn't agree more with that point. I try to make myself as uncomfortable in all kinds of ways as I possibly can. And that includes like putting stuff out that's fun or controversial on social media. Like, I'm always trying to tell people, like, you're boring. Why don't you have a following? You're unbelievably boring. Like, I already know what you're going to put out before it comes out. Like, do you have any idea what's coming out next from me? Probably not. You think it's going this way, and then boom, curveball. Like, you've got to have variation, and you've got to have, so there's a lot to learn. It just, people want to stay in their lane that they're comfortable in forever. And it's like, you're never going to have vertical growth as a person, financially, or any other way if you only stay here. You got to look elsewhere too.
Well, there's chiefs and Indians. There's chiefs and Indians, man. Not everyone's cut out to be a chief. I always say that. So
it's true.
It is what it is. D, were you going to jump in and say something?
Well, I don't even know if that's politically correct to say anymore, Don.
I just said that. I'm like, I can't believe I said that. I feel like I got to get used to this now.
Yeah, well, like that. We all have to live with our little.
Leave it.
Yeah, you were just talking baseball and football, right? Like,
the Kansas City Chiefs and Indians. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's all. That's all there is to it.
In that vein, Pat,
backpedal. Yes.
I know that through my entire sort of strength and conditioning career, we've always had these battles between like free weights versus machines, and like, oh, you use machines, you're horrible, like you're not getting the proprioceptive, coordinative, blah blah, blah, you know.
Yeah.
And I know of a certain NFL team that won the Super Bowl last year, and the strength coach and I talk about using machines during the season because they're smashing into each other on Sunday, and then there's practice, and sometimes you have to unload some of that stress, I guess, and just do the work. And what do you have to say about that in terms of these biases people have?
It's a great question. It's super timely. Like, I do the power hour every week, and it's always, different topic. And the topic for this week was what are the positive influences in the fitness world and the negative influences in the fitness world over the last 20 years? Like, let's just talk about some of those things. And I let the audience on the live Instagram sort of throw some topics in there. And the first two topics that came up were very interesting because it was CrossFit, and Mike Boyle was the second one. And it was like, this is going to be an interesting gear switch. And where I went with my answer about Boyle was, like, first of all, he's been a hero to me. Like, he's someone that's really been, he has strongly influenced my career as much as probably anyone in the strength and conditioning world. I think that he is an independent thinker. I think that he's a very, very intelligent coach. I love the way he categorizes things. I like the way he thinks of an overall structure. I like his way of like logistics and implementing flow. I think he's done a million great things. But I was trying to show, like, if you only look at things in one way and you don't have a critical attitude, you're not being fair and you're not being truthful. And I was saying, if I was going to point out a negative that I have in my mind about Boyle, is that he's created a mindset of being anti-machine. And I feel like that is a trend that has kind of swept through the entire fitness industry. And I would say that, like, it's either an undercurrent, a thought process. But there are so many people that are anti-machine. And I was strongly influenced by that. Almost like if you're not training with a barbell and out in open space, like, you're not even really training. It's not athletic. There's no proprioception. You're not training your stabilizers. It's not functional. All these words that kind of get swept up into it. And then if you train long enough, you've kind of been there, done that, seen it all. You come back around again. And ever since I've gotten back into using more machines, I've had tremendous positive adaptations with my body while reducing the side effects associated with exercise.
Right.
So this is a major topic I talk about all the time, and it's something that, like, you hear other professionals that have a lot of respect, that have said things that have gained traction, and like Dan John is one of those individuals who has said a long time ago, you have to keep the goal the goal. Remember what the goal is, keep that goal the goal. And a lot of times people get sidetracked and they don't remember what their actual goal is. So it's like you got to keep in mind, like, what's the point of resistance training? It's like muscular development, hypertrophy, strength. These kinds of outcomes are generally associated with it. Are you really lifting weights for coordination and timing and speed and those sorts of outcomes? It's not the best tool for those things. Number one, like, look at the people that have trained with a barbell the farthest, like elite power lifters, elite weightlifters. Are they necessarily the most graceful, fluid athletes that you've seen? No, they almost never are. Elite bodybuilders, no. Like, even your weightlifters, who you would say, like, wow, these are super athletic, they're not going to do particularly well if they have to rotate and turn in sports and try to make cuts and things like that. They might be able to jump straight up pretty well or run 10 meters straight ahead pretty fast. But other than going in a straight line like a drag car for a very short distance, they're very limited. And I guarantee they're going to have the same kind of joint pains and problems.
Give me 1 second, guys. I apologize.
Sure.
No problem.
No problem. And do you want me to keep going with this, or do you want me to wait for Don to get back?
He's chasing the dog.
That's amazing.
The domesticated canine base sprint program.
There's nothing better for change of direction. They do that. that canine stereotypical dance in front of you just to mess with you. And then like they know they're going to blow you away at some point.
Oh, geez. That was perfect. That was a perfect segue, though, actually.
Yeah.
Hopefully he didn't lift before this.
Yeah, he's going to be. There he is.
All right.
There we go.
Guys, I'm so sorry.
Did you catch a
No
chicken?
worries.
No, it was a legitimate. I can't even get into it right now. You know what's not to interrupt you on the whole Boyle topic.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike and I have become very good friends, and he's how you speak about Mike is how I speak about Mike. I don't think he's. I mean, I know in a lot of his books he's talked about how they don't use machines, but if you were to sit with him at breakfast right now, he wouldn't say he's anti-machine. I think he would just say like he's anti-machine in his facility. I think that's just what they use. Everything what they use is free weights, and if I think if an athlete was like, listen, I was away and I got on machines for a week, he'd be like, okay, he's not going to sit there like bashing it. But I get what you're saying. I completely get it.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely heard him say something about like if you use a hamstring curl, it's a terrible piece of equipment, or you know other things like that.
Okay,
again,
that's a different story. I didn't hear him say that. Okay.
But the other thing I like about him is that he's someone that changes his mind about stuff too. You know, it's like, hey, I was going this way on this topic, and I was presented with this other information. It seemed like a better idea than what I was previously thinking. Now I'm going this way. I love that about him. But yeah, I just think that like when you think about the outcomes that you're looking for, the goals that are typically what you use strength training for, they're not based upon coordination, timing, precision, speed. You know, if you're using weights for those outcomes, I think there's better tools for those outcomes. Use weights for the best outcome possible that weights are perfect for, which is muscular development, strength. And then, you know, and I don't think it really matters if it's a machine or a free weight, except for the fact that I think that sometimes, you know, when I'm thinking about exercise, there's the outcome of exercise that's the goal, and then there's also side effects of exercise. So I think of exercise as very much as similar to like drugs. You give someone a drug because there's a specific condition that you want the drug to work for, but drugs have side effects. And as drugs advance through time, typically what happens is there's new drugs that give you the same outcome but have less side effects. They're more intelligent drugs, they're more specific, they're targeted for specific kinds of cells or receptors. And I think that should be what happens with exercise going forward, is you find better drills or better way to coach specific sorts of activities that move you towards an outcome, but they come with fewer side effects. And what I mean by side effects of exercise is joint pain, you know, soreness, fatigue, all of these kinds of things. It's like, hey, you want the hypertrophy response, you want the strength increase. You can have that, and you don't have to be as sore, and you don't have to have your joints beat to shit. And if I can get that, that's great. And I try to do that in two ways: choosing drills that limit load that give the same stimulus. Choosing and the way that I coach the drill, I try to coach it in a way that's more muscular and less joint. And I try to pick equipment that would feed the same kind of a response. So whatever accomplishes that is to me a better choice. And if it's a machine, then great. It's just that you know, oftentimes it is a machine. Is kind of where I'm going with that.
Well, you know what I'm curious about. So I saw your first mass program that you created with Ben House, right? That was, God, how long ago was that? That was.
Yeah, I did mass 1. I think I just got some sort of a reminder, like I think it was 6 years ago I did mass 1, and then three or 4 years ago that I did mass 2.
So can you talk about so mass is mass 1 and mass 2 I haven't looked at yet, but mass 1 was I thought was an incredibly simple yet effective program, and for those of the people watching it right now, we'll tell you where to find Pat and where to look up those programs. But can you talk about how program 1 to program 2 has actually evolved, and since mass 2 was done 3 years ago, how has things evolved since then?
Sure. You know, mass 1, or as I like to call it, Tony's program, because it started with, at that time, that was when Peak Performance was supposed to move into its new facility, and the whole thing blew up. But Men's Health was going to do a huge story on Peak moving into the new place. They're going to call it like the gym of the future. And at the same time that that was going on, their editor, Michael Easter, got in touch with me, and he's like, hey, we have a new intern, this kid, Tony. He's a cross-country runner from college, super skinny kid. We want to see a cool project during his internship is how much mass can we put on him in the 16 weeks that he's going to be with us as an intern. Could you write a program for him? So I wrote a program. It was working exceptionally well. He gained something like 21 pounds of lean tissue during the 16 weeks. And halfway through it, they had measured his body composition, and he had gained like 14 pounds or 15 pounds or something like that. And they were like, man, we've never seen anything like this. We would love to do a story on this program and have it run in conjunction with the Peak story when that's all done. And I was like, well, shit, man, like I'm going to get a whole bunch of free advertising for the best program of the year, according to Men's Health. He didn't even know, you know what I mean? Like, but of course he, you know, I'm sure he would have loved it. Like he would have been very supportive. But he like, so I was like, man, I don't have a product to go along with this. They're going to do the best advertising job for something that's ever happened in my life, but I don't have anything to sell with the advertising. So I wrote Mass 1 over the course of a weekend, but I just took this kid's program and I just plugged it into this, and then I wrote a story that went along with it. And to me, the story is always the thing that really gets people to do a program effectively. Like I could put anything on paper, but it's how do I sell it to you to make you psychologically attack the program in a way that brings out your best. So, you know, I always try to do things a little differently because again, like it's boring, and boring has never motivated anyone to do anything. So I wrote the book, and I had it go in conjunction with the movie Rocky IV. You know, it's like every chapter started with one of the quotes from Rocky IV, and the contents of the chapter I tried to relate back to the quote and bring it through. Like chapter 1 was Hearts on Fire. You know, chapter 2 was If He Dies, He Dies. And just bring it back to that, and just kind of keep that sentiment going through it. And Mass 2, I did it with Terminator 2 as the background to it. So, you know, I remember the last chapter was Hasta la Vista, baby. And, you know, all the other, you know, big ones that are in that movie kind of played themselves out chapter to chapter. And it makes it fun for me. It made it fun for the audience. Mass 2, I felt like was real program design. Mass 1 was literally a program for a kid that was a cross-country runner that had never lifted weights in his entire life, that I felt like would psychologically connect to a kid that was used to racing. So I gave him time constraints, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off, 45 seconds off between sets, repeat, you know. So everything in that program is timed, and it's going to challenge you to really work and repeat work over and over and over again. And I honestly, I think more people are beginners than they think. You know, it's like almost everybody out there is a beginner because you're not an elite international athlete. I'm sorry. You're just like a regular person. You're either a has-been that maybe was like Division III level athlete that's now a fitness professional, or you're a never was, but we all have these egos and we think that we're like these elite level. And it's like, no, here's this beginner program that's just going to motivate you and get you to work hard and be consistent and adhere to a program for 16 weeks. And guess what happens? Amazing changes. Why? Because you stuck to something, and because it was simple and you repeated the same simple thing over and over, day after day. And it's not magic. It's just hard work. It's consistent. It's effort. And yeah, for the most part, everybody that's done either, like, especially the first one, because it's so simple. It's the same workout 4 times a week for 4 weeks. And then the workout changes a little bit. And then it's that same workout 4 times a week for 4 weeks. And there's 4 blocks, and that's all it is. So it couldn't be more simple. I mean, on paper, the program is ridiculously easy. There's 4 different workouts that you do for 16 weeks. That's it. It was the easiest thing to write ever, but I put a story to it, and it made people really want to do it. And you know, the thing still sells. Like, I still, every month I kind of get the PayPal thing, like, oh, here comes the mass money. And I'm like, it makes about the same amount of money every month. And you know how much money I've spent for advertising this thing? 0. You know, it's incredible. People do the workouts. They post something on social media. Somebody sees it. They're like, what's that? They're like, oh, it's this program. You got to read it. And it's like, it kind of goes up a little bit every month. But it's years old. It's like, it just keeps kind of coming back in. It's interesting.
It's a nice formula when you develop something like that. It's just kind of consistent revenue, and you got a little bit of growth in there. So from 1 to 2, so how is things evolved for you if you were to rewrite a 3, or would there be any changes? And there doesn't have to be, but I'm just curious to see how you would actually evolve that. Like I said, I haven't seen 2, so I can't speak firsthand.
2 is so much better than 1. It's not even funny. And that's why I selected Terminator 2 as the theme, because I thought it was so, like, the sequel to Terminator was so much better than the original.
Yeah. It's definitely better.
It's like, it's very rare for that to happen. And that's like one time in movie history where I felt like the sequel was better by a large margin. So that's actually why I chose that as the theme of that book. 3 will be written. You know, I've spent the last 18 months writing the Rethinking the Big Patterns book. And it's in editing right now. It was an enormous project. You know, I think Mass 2 was like 40,000 words or something like that. Rethinking the Big Patterns was 187,000 words. You know, I've got big plans for that project on its own. You know, once it's done with editing and having the infographics guy do his thing for making it an ebook, and maybe I'll do a print version. I don't know. I kind of like the ebook route, though. Like, you don't have to pay for paper and deal with whatever is involved with that. You know, I think that at some point I am going to write Mass 3. And I kind of know what the movie is going to be for it. I'm going to keep that a secret for people. Everybody thinks it's going to be Predator. It's not. It's going to be something different. But it's going to be heavily influenced by COVID. Tell you the truth. That's going to be a strong theme through it.
Oh, man, I'm already thinking what it would be. I'm not asking, but
you got to do a poll. You got to do a poll for it.
I'm going to go home.
No, it's already been chosen, man. The first rule of Mass 3 is you don't talk about Mass 3.
About your book, Pat. I wanted to get into that, and obviously I've seen some versions of it and all that, and it's quite extensive. What was the whole thought process behind the book? Is it just to get your thoughts down, and it's, you know, because, you know, certain people will want to read through the entire thing, and some people just want to do your programs or watch your videos and all that. What was the real impetus behind the book?
The Rethinking the Big Patterns one?
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, I've just learned that when I teach something, I learn the topic at a much greater level than any other way of learning. I've always felt that way. Like, when I force myself to teach something, it really enforces it into my brain. And, you know, one of the books that's been a huge influence on me was Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And, you know, I just think that most of us go through our day-to-day lives like just using only intuitive thought. It's kind of like, you've been doing your job for a long time, you're really good at it. Like, when someone's working with me in person, I kind of get a sense, I look at them, I kind of know what to do. And I've had interns and they're like, why did you do that? And I'm like, oh, I saw this, and based upon seeing that, I made this change. And they were like, well, how'd you know? And then it's like, it's almost like having a 3-year-old with you, where they just keep asking why. And it just brings you down this crazy rabbit hole of explaining why, like, repeatedly. So, you know, I originally started this, like, I co-presented for a weekend, and Bill Hartman was one of the other presenters. And he had this line that really affected everybody, which was, everyone here should write out their model. No, seriously, write out your model. And I started the process of like, I started writing out my model, and I always do it the same way. I make a PowerPoint presentation. And I created this skeleton PowerPoint presentation, and that was the beginning of it. And I liked it, and I started using it to present the original Rethinking the Big Patterns seminars. And then I presented a couple of them, and I started to think to myself, like, there's so much more to this. I need to really write this out a little bit. So I started writing a couple of articles to try to explain it. And I actually put them on Simply Faster. And then I started to think about the articles, and I was like, you know what, there's so much more to this that I have to write down. And I started to think about that Daniel Kahneman book about, like, everybody has implicit knowledge of what they're doing. It's kind of like it's running on autopilot, like you see what you see in front of you, and you make your corrections, but it's hard to make that next step of turning the implicit knowledge to explicit knowledge. And if you do that, apparently you learn it to such a great degree. It's like, you know, the same thing as the intern asking you, why did you do that? Now you have to explain it to them. And sometimes you don't do that. You just make these shortcuts. So I sat down, I started to write this thing out. Like what do I actually do on a day-to-day basis? What are all of the possible thought processes that I could have of looking at someone that I'm working with, and all of the different kinds of people that I could potentially work with, for all of the different kinds of goals that people could come to a fitness expert for? And I started to think to myself, well, how do I take every possible physical goal and put them into categories that would spit you out in a given direction? And I tried to, that's basically what this is there are a million different outcomes that could happen from exercise if the exercise is altered in a certain way. But what are the actual under the hood alterations that take place to an exercise? Not like swapping a barbell out for a dumbbell or something like that, but like, you know, if I'm looking at, you know, for instance, a knee dominant exercise, and I was to do kind of like a quarter squat that's overloaded versus a full distance range of motion ass to grass squat, what are the differences between those two things from a physiological perspective? Can I explain what those differences are? Why one person would choose to do this variation versus this variation, or why someone wouldn't be able to do this variation versus that variation? You know, if I was training someone for a speed outcome versus a hypertrophy outcome, just whatever you can think of. And I just tried to create different buckets that represented every possible outcome. And then figure out what actually is another bucket that goes over those buckets. And it came down to there being, for me, 7 primary buckets. And then inside of those 7 primary buckets, then there's sub buckets inside of there. And if you can understand the big 7 pillars of this thing, and then see the way that the 7 pillars interact with each other, now you can understand exactly how to modify any particular drill to get any particular outcome that you would want. So as a for instance here, because I think the examples are really critical. Like, you know, in pillar 1, which is movement quality, that one of 7 main buckets, the 7 pillars. Under bucket 1, pillar 1, movement quality, there's a few pieces. There's motor programs, there's stances, and there's planes of motion. So in motor programs, I have 13 different motor programs that exist within fitness development, one of which is triple extension, okay? And, you know, in triple extension, you can then pull that out and you can determine, are you doing triple extension in a bilateral stance, in a front-back staggered stance, or in a lateral staggered stance? Okay, once you've determined that, what plane are you doing it in? Sagittal plane, frontal plane, transverse plane. So for the sake of making it as easy as possible, let's go with a bilateral stance, sagittal plane, triple extension drill, which would be any kind of vertical jump sort of a situation. Okay, but there's different kinds of outcomes that can happen from different sorts of implementations of 2-foot vertical jumps. You know, I could make it really elastic if I wanted to, or I could make it really muscular if I wanted to. But what would kind of lead me to that thing? And so there's all these different kinds of pieces that come after that. Like, pillar 2 is movement quantity, load, velocity, duration. Let's say this is going to be a low load triple extension exercise with high velocity for short duration. Okay. Now I know that information about this task. The third pillar is movement standardization. I'm not going to get into that because that's basically you using like dartfish to measure joint angles and then to see what tissues were affected from a sensory perspective. Pillar 4 is movement progression. So I can determine, like, do I need to have this person hold on to a support? Do I, how do I make it more difficult or challenging for this person? At what level of proficiency are they? Pillar 5 now is movement strategy. Is this person, doing a compressive exercise or an expansive exercise? Pillar 6 is the muscular orientation, a concentric oriented muscle or an eccentric oriented muscle. And pillar 7 is what kind of muscular action is this person using, an overcoming muscular action or a yielding muscular action. So I'll describe the activity through the pillars, and then I'll tell you why it's different than another kind of activity. So it's going to be a triple extension activity that's done bilateral stance sagittal plane. It's going to be low load, it's going to be high velocity, it's going to be short duration. Okay, now we're going to move our way out here. It's going to feature, for the most part, a compressive movement strategy. It's going to feature a concentric muscular orientation, and it's going to alternate between yielding and overcoming muscular actions. Okay, what this means is that the person is basically doing repeat pogo hops like an ankle hop. They are not actually going to be squatting down and jumping up. I know this because I stated that they're doing a concentric muscular orientation jump. So if you watch someone doing a pogo jump, at no point in time do they ever go into dorsiflexion. They're always going to be in plantar flexion. If you're in a plantar flexion position, you're going to remain in a concentric orientation of the gastroc soleus Achilles complex. Okay, and that is what actually gives people an elastic sort of response. It would be the same information you'd pull from, like, running research that shows that the faster someone runs, the less hip, knee, and ankle flexion you witness on ground contact. Why does someone show you less hip, knee, and ankle flexion on ground contact when they're running faster? Because they're able to maintain a concentric muscular orientation during yielding actions. So yielding is when you're absorbing. So it's kind of like your muscle doesn't need to go into an eccentric position to absorb forces. If it does manage to go into an eccentric orientation, you're going to increase the range of motion. The more that you stay concentric, the lower the range of motion for a yielding action. The more that you lose a concentric orientation, the greater the range of motion, the less elastic it becomes because it's going to take longer. So it's kind of like, but if I want to do a squat jump, I'm going to have to go into an eccentric orientation of the muscles, and I'll get less of an elastic return. So it took me 187,000 words to go through the whole explanation of this thing, and I'm trying to do it in 5 minutes. But it basically walks you through why a drill done a certain way would lead to every possible kind of outcome you could get from those sorts of drills. It's a model that I think reinforces itself stronger and stronger and stronger as you go through the book. And you begin to see, like, why do certain athletes need certain kinds of training? Like, why would I train a men's professional tennis player that specializes on clay court differently than I would train a nose tackle? And the other thing is, it's almost like, why would I create, like, I talk a lot about to-do lists and to not do lists in this book, with the to not do list being probably more important than the to-do list. Figure out what you don't need to train for people. Like, here's the whole playbook, and now figure out what you don't need for them and throw that the hell out. And now you can actually focus on only the things that are important for this person and maximize the amount of time you spend on doing these things. And here's, understanding why that's the case for both your to-do list and your to-not-do list.
It's definitely an interesting thing. I mean, the first thing you made me think about was, I think the argument between, flexibility and stability, and how so many people are always thinking it's flexibility, and they're always in there stretching, stretching, stretching. And you look at the dancer who can do a standing split, and she's like, my flexibility's poor. And you're like, no, you need more stability. That's why your body's all messed up. But I think that's a perfect example. What you just kind of said, kind of wrapping on that is, not every exercise is for everyone, and just because you see it in a magazine doesn't mean someone else needs to be doing it. You might have incredible thoracic rotation, so why the hell do you need to work on it?
It also explains why you can't do something. So it's like, if you can't get to the bottom of a squat, like, it's hard again to just be able to get to the expert. It's almost like sometimes things are complicated and it takes a minute to explain the whole damn thing. But I've been frustrated by the terms mobility and stability and those kinds of things, because I don't think they mean anything. I think that it's an intuitive brain looking at things and being like, oh, this is what I see. But when you actually try to explicitly explain those concepts, it's like you run into these brick walls of logic and thinking it through. Like, stability, when I think about what that word actually means, it just means how likely something is to fall down. And can you measure it? It's an immeasurable concept, but it's a subjective term that you can ask people. Did you feel more stable when you did that activity? And they might tell you, yes, I did. But you can't measure it. You have no idea, like, how much more stable did I, but you can ask them, they can report back to you, but it's not an objective term that we can actually use in fitness. Same thing with mobility. It's like, it just doesn't mean anything to me. Like, range of motion on a table, I can measure. Range of motion on an exercise, I can measure if I've got some technology and I can drop some lines and angles and things like that. But the reason, like, I'm always interested in, why can this person squat all the way down and why can this person not squat all the way down? And it would come down to, like, being able to get to the bottom of a squat in this model requires certain tissues to be able to reach an eccentric orientation. Quads, pelvic floor being the two primary ones, okay? And why can some people do it and some people can't? Like, eccentric orientation belongs to something else, which would be called an expansion movement strategy. And an expansion movement strategy has other pieces associated with it. It's associated with the inhalation phase of respiration. It's associated with very specific joint actions like external rotation, flexion, abduction, plantar flexion, and supination. It's also part of another concept called the propulsion arc that is beyond the ability to just explain in this. But it's like, if you can't get to the bottom of a squat, is it your mobility? Is it your stability? I don't know what those things really mean, but I do know that if I feed you more of these joint actions, and here's how I could feed it to you without it even being in your lower extremity. If I put a kettlebell in your hands and you hold it by the horns, that makes you supinate your hands. It makes you externally rotate your arms. It makes you flex and abduct the humerus. That almost always increases the depth that someone can squat to that was previously showing you poor depth, because it fed you this expansion concept. I could also elevate your heels and witness your hips move more. Not just that it's like, oh, it's a functional movement screen. No. Your hips moved more because I affected your ankle with an expansion movement strategy piece. I plantar flexed you. I didn't just plantar flex your ankle. I expanded your skeleton. I affected the entire skeleton with one joint thing. It's like, here's the toolbox and the rule book to be, if you understand what you're looking at for an exercise, and you understand that this exercise fits more into the compression dominant zone of movement, which is the complete opposite. Exhale, internal rotation, adduction, extension, dorsiflexion, pronation. I can take, and a deadlift is a perfectly good example of this. I can alter any of your joints with any of those joint actions in your setup. Hey, I might use a kettlebell again, but this time I might only give you one. and make you grab it this way between your legs, because now I just pronated your hands, I IR'd your humerus, I adducted your arms, and that almost always gets people to sit their hips back farther. And did I coach it? Did I change anything that I said verbally to that person? No, but I changed the setup in a way that compresses their skeleton a little bit more. And maybe I'll tell them to exhale on the way down with this drill, because it's going to change the rib cage and the pelvis through the compression of exhalation. And it just makes your job a million times easier.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I was just talking to Derek about it. We were just messaging each other. We should have you on for like a deconstructing one movement, because I know there's so much, there's so many different avenues you can go with this, and there's never just a one word answer. And that's why it's actually really refreshing to hear you talk. But can you tell all of our followers right now, where could they download your program and where can they learn more about you? Because I know everyone's going to be really interested about what you have in store in the future.
I tried to make everything easier and literally just have everything run through my Instagram.
I love it.
So it's my Instagram handle, which is at Dr. Pat Davidson. And I think there might be an underscore, or maybe, I don't even know what the hell it is. There's a period.
Just check out my IG. I follow Pat. So he's got a very fun
so handle. Yeah, and then the link tree through the bio link has pretty much everything there. The Rethinking the Big Patterns book, I'm going to publish that with Renaissance Periodization. We're looking at about end of September, early October date for when that should be done. I'm going to have an online platform with the video seminar for Rethinking the Big Patterns. It'll be an intro seminar. And I'm looking to build out the seminars off of that going forward and make a certification model out of this thing.
Well, that'll be a lot of fun. Can you let Derek, and I would love to support that. I love, I've been to several of your seminars. I know a few of them have been at Drive. So anytime I get a chance to sit down and listen to you, you're someone that I put on the top of my list. So if you don't mind letting us know when that comes around, I'll definitely give some love on my social. I'm just curious. I'm going to go check out Mass 2 probably tonight, just because I like knowing when people always ask me for, great people out there to be, because just how I operate, I never like to say me. I like to spread the love and refer people out to other coaches that I really admire and think are doing a great job in the industry. So just keep up what you're doing, man. I couldn't be more proud. And I know right now with everything going on with COVID, brother, listen, there are mornings you wake up and you're like, fuck, what's going on? The strong will survive, man. And you got to keep your eye on the prize and keep pushing forward with this project. And guess what? No one's going to leave gyms. People are coming back. They're itching. The model changes a little bit, and I love how you're doing this thing where people can bring that product at home. But just keep doing what you're doing, and as always, let me know if you need anything.
I'll send you over Mass 2. At least I'll get you in touch with the person that can send it over, because I can't even.
I'm happy to support,
can't even
but thank
open
you.
my own thing. But I think you'll like it. It's a brutal book from the perspective of me being very personal about my own life too. In this, it's a lot of uncomfortable truths about me. It's mixed in with a story backdrop, and it tries to teach some physiology at the same time.
But I knew it. I'm excited to see it. Thanks for sending that over. And D, you're the best, Pat. We could have gone for 2 hours here, but let's deconstruct a simple movement one day. I'd love to give you more love on here, and let's see where we can take it. All right.
Be happy to. And Don, you got to get over and check out the strength score system sometime.
Dude, I've been saying it. Honestly, I could probably do it now. So if you want to message me in the next 2 weeks, maybe 2 days, send me, and I will clear my schedule. And I promise you I will come in, because I've been telling you guys I'm going to come over, and I'd love to rip through some of that Kaiser with you a little bit.
It'll be a lot of fun, man. You'll have a blast.
Yeah.
But you're training with me. I don't want to hear this crap. We're doing it together.
Enough
of this running shit. I'll see you guys later. I got to bolt. Thanks,
Take care.
Thanks,